Good afternoon. I'm John Orr, Tellico Village Board President for this year. Welcome you to the Town Hall. Couple housekeeping comments before we get started. We do have a hard stop at 5 o'clock. That doesn't mean we stop people getting in the queue at 5 o'clock. We have to be out of the church at 5 o'clock, so just want to be aware of that. The church was not thrilled last month when we went more than an hour over our allotted time. So I don't know if people are aware, but there's a lot of stuff happening in the last month in the village. We had two of our top POA management leaders leave, and as a rule, we do not comment on HR matters, but I can make a statement to give a little more context. Starting in the early fourth quarter last year, members of the board held a series of discussions with CEO Chet Pillsbury regarding POA's perspective and approach to a variety of governance, strategic, communication, and financial and HR matters. In January, the board had, and Mr. Pillsbury had a fundamental disagreement concerning the timing and transparency of his decision to eliminate the Chief Operating Officer position. Mr. Pillsbury ultimately chose to resign. The board presented Ms. Lane with an opportunity to remain employed and lead the POA, which she ultimately chose not to accept. We wish both individuals the best in their future endeavors. The POA values employee privacy, particularly where it relates to HR matters, so we really can't make any further comments about their departures. So I would ask that we don't get a bunch of questions asking for more details, as we really can't. Okay, so I can tell you it's been a very hectic, busy number of weeks for the board especially, as well as I'm sure a lot of the directors. For me personally, it's been more than a full-time job. It's been pretty much all day, every day, in some cases 7 days a week. And while I was supposed to be on vacation the last several weeks in Florida, it completely consumed the time I was there and forced my early return to the village, for which I get your praise and gratitude. Although sometimes it sounds more like criticism and personal attacks, but I'm sure everybody has the best at heart. The entire board has put in countless hours navigating through these last few weeks. It's been challenging, but we have some good news that we are very close to announcing an interim general manager, potentially as early as tomorrow, so stay tuned for that. And this interim general manager will lead the organization while we engage in a full-blown search for the permanent leader of the organization. So we're making progress there. Now I want to shift gears, talk about an effort I kicked off in December of last year. A question came up regarding policies and delegations of authority within the POA that had been done over the past who knows how many years. And I learned that there was not a single source to reference for all of these things that have taken place. So I initiated an effort to research as far back as records could be searched for all official policies and actions that prior boards may have passed. For example, it's been common knowledge since I've been on the board that the CEO was delegated the authority to spend up to $50,000 so long as it was on budgeted expenses. But when But when was that delegation done, and where was the document that memorialized it? Nobody could tell me. And were there other stipulations associated with that delegation? I couldn't get those answers, so that's what led to this kind of research effort. And what's taken place since then is a combination of folks within the POA itself have been gathering all this information, trying to get it into one, ultimately a binder. It'll be we're gonna call it a board reference manual, but it's gonna be all of the policies that have been enacted, the company policies, all the delegations, who we've delegated authority to within the organization to sign contracts, make expenditures, all that kind of stuff will be documented and in one place. We're hoping to have this concluded this month. So that's, for us, that's a big deal. At least for me personally, that's kind of the environment I've always operated in. There's clear rules and regulations and guidelines, and everybody knows what they're allowed to do and not allowed to do. So I think this will be a good step forward. But one of the items that surfaced through this process was a 20-year-old policy that the board passed regarding open meetings. Upon review of the policy, it was noticed that the policy was not even consistent with our own bylaws, which we have now updated, and you can see the text here. It should be somewhat readable. It's going to be posted. We're going to pass this officially, get a board vote on this next week to make this the new open meeting policy. But now the policy actually contains the exact wordings from Article 4, Section 6 of our bylaws related to board meetings. And it also contains a provision for open forums, whether it be at the board meeting or at board-sponsored meetings like the town hall. So this is the second half of the page. This whole thing is one page. But this is the second half of the page that deals with the open forum. And we make every effort for the last several years to encourage people to give us their opinions, ask questions, whether it's here or at the board meetings. But we got a lot of feedback over the last several meetings from folks that think there needs to be some guardrails on this open forum. And one was time. So you may have noticed a little clock here, which ties into number one here, that each member will be able to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes. And there's no yielding of time. This is not the U.S. Congress or Senate. You can't yield your time to somebody else. And then we're discouraging multiple people from doing repetitive statements, saying essentially the same thing when you've got 10, 15 people in line anxiously waiting to get to the microphone. We could easily do a show of hands if we want to say how many people agree with whatever. If we can get 20, 30 hands without all 20, 30 people coming up to the microphone. So anyways, that's hopefully going to get us to more orderly open forums and get us out in a reasonable amount of time. This open forum guideline, I'll admit, was developed by a sister Cooper community that we shamelessly copied. I think it made all kinds of sense to us to have some guidelines about being respectful, no personal attacks, and we're not going to engage in a debate here about something. We're willing to listen to anybody that has something to say, but we're not going to get into some big debate on stage here. And again, this is also the time clock is consistent with how Monroe and Loudoun County conduct their council meetings. We've reviewed a bunch of different POA board meetings from across the country. Seems like everybody puts their board meetings online now, and it's pretty consistent with the putting a time clock on. But if for some reason you're not able to ask your question or express your opinion in the allotted time, you will be asked to go to the back of the line and complete it when your turn comes back up, just to be respectful of all the people in line behind you. Next topic was, at the last town hall, I said we're going to give advance notice of board agendas. Here's the current agenda for next week. It's a pretty mundane agenda for the most part, with the exception of a couple wastewater project items. One is seeking authorization to obtain TDEC permits and commence the bid process for the upgrade of the main wastewater lift station. That's the one at Sequoia Road that pumps all of our wastewater to LUB. And the other is to authorize the engineering for the Kahidi main lift station. Both projects have been on the books and been talked about at PSAC for years. Kahidi project has been moved up in the timeline due to more and more issues we're having with that lift station in the last year. And it was, I think, at the very last, as far as the timeline, the number 5 on the list of the 5 projects. It's now been moved up to essentially number 2 because we can't wait with the growth in Kahidi. We've had some overflows in the last year, so we've got to move that up and get that done as quickly as possible. And that's about all I have for opening comments. And we have Carla here from Timeless Tellico that's going to give some information about their fundraising efforts in Tanasi and a bunch of good stuff. So I'll turn it over to Carla Johnson.
Thank you, John. So I have a question for you. How many of you are familiar with Timeless Tellico Foundation? Awesome. That's great. For those of you who aren't, I'm going to share a little bit about the foundation so you'll know us better. First of all, a vital element of our mission, and you can see our mission and our mission statement and our charter information there. A vital element of our mission is to fund new and enhance existing recreation and amenity facilities. The Tanasi Clubhouse, therefore, and the practice amenity fits right into the heart of our mission. And while the POA may eventually be able to provide all the needed elements of the practice facility at Tanasi, the foundation's role is to facilitate tax-deductible fundraising to help enhance those amenities and to provide them faster. So to share a little bit about some of the projects, you may be familiar with some of the projects and programs that the foundation has supported, including the covered pickleball complex at the Wellness Center, the floating kayak launch at Clear Creek, bocce ball courts at the Chota Recreation Center, the Green Space Initiative, including trails, kiosks, and pocket parks throughout the village, the Warriors at Ease program for our Tellico Village veterans, and now, Phase 1 of the golf experience at Tanasi, the Clubhouse Golf Simulator Bays. So, Director of Golf Operations, Casey Flanagan, provided some images of TrackMan Golf Simulator Bays. And these are configurations that, with a little adjustment, we could emulate at Tanasi. In fact, we do have an architect's rendering by the Tanasi architect Paradigm Studio depicting a proposed design of our space. That is still, by the way, in the plan for the building, the space. So the private funding that has been requested to complete that space is $185,000. So you can see there that includes $100,000. That's for 2 TrackMan IO simulators, a $55,000 furniture package, $20,000 for specialty lighting and sound as part of that, and some finishes, which would include all the accessories and finishings that we would need to make that space really great. So fundraising for phase 1 of the golf experience at Tanasi, which is those golf simulator bays, where we stand now, last year in 2024, we held a spring gala for the Timeless Tellico Foundation, and those funds were designated for the golf experience at Tanasi, and we raised about $50,000 for that. Some of that is still in pledge form, but $50,000, and then we received a grant from Loudoun County through Commissioner Henry Cullen, and we pledged a $10,000 grant to this project from those funds. So our goal now is to raise $150,000 in 90 days. And we have tax-deductible options to do that. One is just through donations, one is through barstool naming rights, and one is through bench naming rights. And there will be more opportunities as we go forward. But for this first phase, we really want to concentrate on raising that $150,000 in 90 days. Now, if you do the math and you add the $150,000 to the amount of money that's already been raised or pledged, it does add up to more than $185,000. And there are two reasons for that. You can guess the first one is that we need to plan for contingencies and potential cost overruns. And the second one is we will still need to collect the donations and naming rights that are currently pledges for that. So until that money is in hand, we can't spend it. So stay tuned to discover how to make a donation or to choose the barstool or bench naming rights. So here's the first one. This is if you would like to contribute to seeing this project come to life, please take out your cell phones. Go ahead. It's not high school class. You can take out your cell phone. and you should be able to open the camera on your cell phone and shoot that QR code, and it will take you right to a specific Tanasi Simulator Bays donation page on the Timeless Tellico website. And so you can make your donation right there, or you can, once you go to that link, you can bookmark it and save it for later if you want to consider doing that at a later time. And so you can choose the amount, and you can make your donation now. You can also make it in honor of someone if you'd like to. You have all those options on the order form, and you can use your debit or credit card to make those donations. So moving on, another option we have are our barstool naming rights. Now these are fun because you can get a plaque on your barstool, and in this case you can specify which restaurant or bar you'd like your barstool to be in. You get a little plaque with your name on it, and then you get to choose a quote or a phrase that you can put on that plaque. And so now I wouldn't say that means you can go into the bar and kick somebody out of your seat, but I mean, you can work that out at the time. We have already sold 6 of the bar stools in Tellico Village, and you too can have your name and famous or infamous quote engraved on a plaque and affixed to a bar stool at Tanasi. So you can do the same thing with that QR code that you did with the last one, and just shoot it with your cell phone camera. It'll take you to the link, and like I said, you can donate right this second, or you can just save and bookmark that link for later. So another option that you have is bench naming rights. So these are available throughout Tellico Village. You've probably seen these in various places, like at the yacht club, at the wellness center, on hiking trails, at the Kahiti pub. I believe there's a bench there. And it's the same kind of deal. You get a plaque on the bench. It's $5,000 for 7 years of naming rights for that. You can do it in honor of someone, or you can put your own quote or phrase on there. And so if you'll get your cell phones ready, we'll give you a QR code for that as well. So all of those you can also just go to the Tellico. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll give you a second to do that. And then I do want to tell you one other way. In case, I know some of us are not comfortable making donations online. You can go ahead to the next slide. So of course, we will still accept donations the old-fashioned way. So if you'd rather write a check and get it to the foundation, that's perfectly fine. Just make sure you make your checks payable to Timeless Tellico Foundation. On the subject line, or on the memo line, you can put Tanasi Golf Simulators, or whatever element of that you want to direct your donation to. and then you can mail it to the address that's on the screen, or you can put it in an envelope marked Timeless Tellico and drop it off at the front desk of the Wellness Center or at the Tanasi Pro Shop. And you can do that at the Tanasi Temporary Pro Shop. We don't want to wait until the new one's built. So go ahead and do that. And then any of this information can also be found on our website. You can find our mailing address there. You can find a link to the donation form there. So if you didn't catch everything today, please visit our website at timelesstellico.com. Also there is a contact form. But if you have any questions or you want to provide feedback to us, it's info@timelesstellico.com is our email address. That's info@timelesstellico.com. There is a contact form on the website as well. So if you go to the timelesstellico.com website, you'll find a contact form there, and that goes right into our email, and we'll get back with you. The foundation currently has 2 board positions available, and we're always appreciative of anyone who volunteers to serve on our various committees. So if you're interested in getting connected with Timeless Tellico, helping to raise funds for anything that has to do with Tanasi or any other recreation or amenities in the village, please go online, please go to our website, fill out the volunteer form, and one of our board members will get back to you, and we'll start a conversation about how you can get involved with us, and we'd very much love to have you. So in closing, I would just say we can do this. $150,000 in 90 days. Together, we can accomplish great things. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Scott McCrae. I think most of you know me by now. This is my, I believe, 3rd town hall update for both Tanasi and the TAP projects. So let me start with Tanasi. So for the construction update on Tanasi, basically, in spite of the wonderful weather we've had recently, we've actually been able to get quite a bit done. We have the cart path now completed from behind the temporary pro shop all the way up to the starter shack. So that's complete. For those of you that might have been watching that, it involved quite a bit of filling and compacting of subsoils, moving of the soils from the putting green there to that location, and then forming it and placing the concrete there. We have been continuing to excavate the green and turn that into our new parking lot. So all of the parking for the boat docks and the golf course will be over in that area where the putting green was. So we've got that excavation. We're about 35% complete there, and we'll continue as soon as the weather dries out. As most of you know, it's fun working with the red clay here when it gets wet. We're using all of those spoils. So all of that dirt that's coming up there, if it's the top where it's nice, good, sandy, loam topsoil, we're moving all of that dirt to the golf maintenance area over on Davis Ferry Road, and we'll be keeping that dirt there. And then at the end, when it comes time to landscape, we'll haul all of that topsoil back in, and we'll use that for the landscaping. Once we get down a couple of feet, we start finding clay. We need to remove that clay, and in order to get down to the grade, well, it just so happens we need fill where the restaurant's going and where the cart barn is going. So we're taking all of that clay material, moving it over there, compacting it, and that'll give us our good sub base for the slab for the restaurant and to enclose the base or partially enclose the basement for the cart barn. So we have removed the cart path behind the 9th green, and just this last week, we removed the cart path from the parking lot down to the docks. And I do apologize for anybody that had a boat on the dock and might have gotten some confusing emails. I spent about an hour meeting with the construction foreman, and we decided that they would give us a week for boat access in case anybody needed that. The following day, they came out and removed the cart path for me after Caitlin sent out emails telling everybody you got a week. We went ahead and immediately got gravel put in there, so there's total access. So I think there was about 4 days when people, if they needed to get to their boats, couldn't. But T-BART, as part of that email, T-BART said that they would move anybody over there, and for anybody that needed access, we could have taken you over there, or you could relocate your boat to the courtesy docks at the yacht club. So going forward, we will have to put concrete on that cart path, on that path down. When we do that, we will try and notify the boat owners there so that if they need to access the boat, they can do that before. We expect about 3 days where we'll have to form up, place the concrete, then remove forms. So we'll have construction in that area. If things go as planned, they'll do it unexpectedly on us again, but we'll try and again accommodate everybody as we can. We are waiting now for LUB to install the overhead power. They've got the lines in, they just haven't come up from a new transformer up to the overhead power and then down to the pro shop when they're supposed to give us enough notice so that we try not to disrupt the golf operations over at Tanasi. And again, I will say that LUB told us they would have the poles out there in a week. They showed up the following day and wondered why we had people parking in the parking lot where they needed the poles, but so far everybody's been pretty accommodating there, and we appreciate that. Right now, because of the weather, we're about 3 weeks behind schedule. We do not anticipate that will impact the opening on the first quarter of 26. I've been working with the contractor pretty closely, and we've been reworking the schedule and so that they can get some work in there and all. But so far, all seems to be going well. Very responsive to the contractor. They've done some really good work for us. Let's see, there we go. Now I want to update you on the TAP projects. There's a number of things going on with those. Where'd it go? Oh, there we go. So the first thing, I know I told you last month that we had put the tank on hold, and some of the projects we asked Jacobs to go back and reassess what they were, the difference between a couple of their reports. Back in 2021, they did a report that didn't include the wastewater tank. In the 2024 report that we were working from, they said, oh, it would really be cost effective if we put a storage tank in. And that didn't go over very well with the community, as I might say. And so we heard you, we asked Jacobs to go back and relook, and as part of that reassessment, what they said is the tank continues to be a very cost-effective way to deal with our I&I problems. And so while we put the tank on hold and we are not proceeding with the design or any construction of that tank, that if we cannot solve I&I is a possibility. So we will not be looking at that until we exhaust all other options. But I just want to make sure that people know the tank is not dead, it's just on life support. The big thing about why that tank was so much more cost effective than the I&I is because some of the assumptions that Jacobs made on how do I identify sources of I&I and how do we remediate it was based on some 2019, 2020 data that we gave, that the POA gave them from an I&I remediation project that they undertook back then. They put in somewhere between 500 and 1,000 of these 5 inches extensions throughout the village and saw no reduction in I&I. Now, that was a qualitative assessment. And when they said they saw no reduction, how they determined that was, quite simply, when we got a big rain event, we overflowed a couple of the wet wells at the pump stations. They put all these tanks, or all these extensions in, and when we got a big rain, we still overflowed some of the pump stations' wet wells. Now, the problem with that assessment is that if you were 150% of the capacity before, and then you put the tanks, the extensions on, and you get down to 110% of the capacity, you still overflow the wet well. So just looking at how much water's on the ground, they couldn't determine, well, was it more than last time or not? So at that point, they stopped the project, because I know a number of you have said, why didn't we just keep putting the tank extensions on back in 2020? That's why we didn't. Public Works at that time, using a qualitative assessment, said, we don't think we're doing any good. So they stopped. And I will talk more about what we're doing to address I&I now on my last couple of slides. But I want to get to the rest of what Jacob said on that. So that was the reason why Jacob said it's too costly to do that, because the data they got from us when they did that assessment gave them some information that it would be more costly and more timely than we believe it will, than it's turning out to be. And I'll give you that information in a minute. They also they looked at replacing the main pump station with new equipment versus renovating that. Far more cost effective to go with new equipment, considering how much of the old equipment would have to be upgraded and the difficulty and complexity of modifying the existing pump stations, the existing main pump station, with the recommended upgrades. So we've gone forward with, as John mentioned, I'll be asking them to allow us to go out to bid with the design for that, and to submit to TDEC the request for a permit. And both reports did recommend either replacement or upgrading of certain components at the other 4 main pump stations within the village. That's Mealacqua, Toqua, Tanasi Coves, and Tanasi Shores. And there's a lot of old corroded piping and equipment there. We've recently gone out and done a physical survey of that, and I think we've got some concurrence that there needs to be a lot of work done. There needs to be work done there. We will engage Jacobs later on what the best recommendations would be for those. So that's pretty much the summary of their assessment, but I wanted to make sure everybody knew they gave us back to us. It was at the end of July when they end of January when they gave it to us. So I wanted to go ahead and summarize that for you here. All right, there we go. So the main pump station, as we looked at the new design and what needed to be done, basically the main pump station, the equipment is end of life and or very deteriorated, which has put a lot of the equipment, the valves, the piping is in very bad shape and needs to all be replaced. We are designing so that we can, at the current time, comply with the LUB restriction or the LUB restriction of 1,100 GPM maximum flow when it's wet weather. The pump stations will be designed for peak flow, which is 1,500. What that allows us to do is, should LUB go forward with their plans to put additional pipeline under there and increase their capacity to handle our water, we could take advantage of that, which is why I say, while the tank's not dead, it's on life support, because now we will be able to look at, could we possibly use that capacity if and when they bring it online. Why Jacobs recommended the tank in the first place is because they had no firm plans to do that. We have no firm timeline from LUB and still don't, even after our most recent meeting. So we have to continue to keep in the back of our mind the tank, depending on what LUB does. The 5 key pump stations, again, must be upgraded. As John mentioned, we've had some overflows in those when we get wet weather. We are still trying to define what a wet weather event is. We've had a considerable amount of rain this past couple of days. We did not get an overflow at any of our pump stations. However, where we have the monitors, and I'll talk more about this on our ID&I pilot study over Kahidi, we did see a 350% increase in water inflow in the last 2 days versus a dry day the day before when we got the first meter in. We also have to look at the force main that we have. That's the main pipeline between us and LUB. It's also 35 years old and has had some failures over the past couple of years, so the new design takes into account soft starts and variable speed motors, so we can make sure that we don't have problems with that. And by doing the main pump station first, it allows us to progressively go through and upgrade the others as we get to it. So this is just a quick summary of what we're looking at for this design. And notice, I do say, without the wastewater storage tank. So please, I want everybody to understand, that is, it's not in any of the design documents now. We have taken the wastewater tank out of all of our submissions to TDEC. And when we go out for bids, there will be no tank. It complies with our request to limit our flow during wet weather to their capacity. It allows us to handle the peak flow rate, which we are legally required to design to. It allows us to upgrade the other pump stations to handle the capacity coming out of the other pump stations. So anything we can put into the main pump station, we can get out of the main pump station as we go forward. And this also includes, we're looking at that capacity is at build out. It's not what we're currently doing. And the one thing, again, I want to just remind everybody, it does count on us successfully being able to address some of the I&I. Again, a little bit more details just for those of you that have been helping me with the engineering and with the comments and all. I do appreciate those, but we've got 3 pumps. 2 will be operational. The 3rd one will be an installed spare. Our wet wells are being upgraded and designed to meet current standards. We will have biofilter odor control. So for those of you that live around any of the pump stations that we do modify, and especially the main pump station and the Kahiti pump stations, you will get the latest technology for odor control. We have an emergency electrical generator provided to this, and a couple of people have said, why do you need a generator? If the power goes out in the village, nobody's pumping wastewater to the main pump station. Well, that would be true if we lost power throughout the entire village, but there are many times when we lose it in just pieces, and especially in Tokwa, because of, one, where it's located and just the way the power gets to that main station. So we've got the provisions to keep that pump station running, even should we lose power within Tokwa, but still have it in other places within the village and all. We will have variable speed motors, and SCADA is supervisory control and data acquisition. So that is the technology that's normally used for this. It allows us to monitor inflow. It allows us to monitor outflow. We'll have control valves on both the in and out, so we can control flow into the different pump stations. And when all of the upgrades are done throughout the village, as the end of all of these projects, they will be able to communicate with each other, so we'll know if we're restricting flow into the main pump station. Well, that means we need to restrict flow out of the other pump stations that are feeding it. So we'll be able to do all of that. And again, we do know, and we did hear you, that should all attempts fail and we need a tank, it won't be at that location right now. Or at least we wouldn't plan to put it there. We've heard you, and I just wanted that to be a point. It's not there, it's not on the plans, and it's not on any of our drawings. The RDI&I efforts. I think we've got a very aggressive, very good plan on this. Basically, what we are doing is, the reason why we put this pilot study together is so that we can do 3 things. 1, determine the effectiveness of the 5-inch risers. There are a number of folks that say, just put the risers on the low-lying tanks, you'll solve your I&I problems. There are a bunch of people that say that won't solve the problem, or it certainly won't get us where we need to be and all. So as an engineer, I said, well, let's get the data and figure out who's right, and it's probably a little bit of both. That the risers will be very helpful, but I don't know if they'll get us there, but this way we'll have that data. So that's one of the things there that we're really trying to look at. So can we get there in this? And like I said, the 2019, 2020 efforts by Public Works to do this, they didn't get there, but they didn't have this data. So that's why I want the data. We are doing inspections of the tanks, and we have installed meters in certain locations within Kahidi. And when I say we're doing inspections of the tanks, I've got 2 full-time inspectors right now. In the 11 days that they've been inspecting, they've inspected, let me see here, 275 tanks. And when I say tank inspections, they are popping the lids off of the tanks, they're looking at them, they're addressing whether or not the internals of the tank, there should be a vault on most of the tanks, whether they're in place, whether they're creating stresses or strains on some of the pipes going in and out. They are looking at the terrain. Is water from your house draining down toward the tank? Is that tank at, above, or below grade, the tank lids? All of that is being addressed. It's being entered into a database. And at this particular, I did a sort right before we came here. Right before I came here, 32% of the tanks are low-lying and have been identified for us to put extensions on. And we have also identified where those low-lying tanks, if they are above the lowest drain in your house, so that we don't put an extension on one and then turn around and backing up wastewater into somebody's house. So all of that is being addressed by the team. The other thing they're looking at is your downspouts. There had been some comment about perhaps downspouts were connected to the tank. To date, of all of the inspections, there have been no downspouts connected, and that is I don't want to say it's an impossibility, but it's very unlikely for 2 reasons. The 4-inch drain tile, black drain tile that most people use to drain their downspouts away from their house is not the same size as the 4-inch wastewater line coming out of your house. They are different sizes. They're not compatible. There's no way to connect them. Secondly, the tank is installed by Tellico Dirtworks during construction. Most people's downspout drains are installed by your landscaper well after the tank is installed. We're just doing the double check to make sure, because again, while I say it's unlikely, it's not impossible. People are very creative when they want to be. So we want to make sure that somebody didn't do that. So we're double checking all of that. Again, the meters, as I mentioned, we've bought some battery operated meters. They're going to be here. They were shipped last Friday. For the last 4 weeks, the vendor has told us they're shipping on Friday. As soon as we get them, we'll get the rest of them installed. I've got one battery-operated meter installed on one of the neighborhoods, and I've got a powered meter installed at the main pump station on Kahidi. Why did we start with Kahidi? As John mentioned, we've had most of our problems there. But equally important, there are a number of neighborhoods within Kahidi where all of the tanks, all of the homes in a certain area drain to a common sewer line where I can put a meter and monitor the flow and the flow reduction based on the implementation of these downspouts. Of the 5-inch extensions. So that's what we're looking at. So we're monitoring wet weather, dry weather, and once we get from each area a wet weather flow and a dry weather flow, we will be installing the extensions in those areas, and then we'll be looking for the wet and dry weather flow as well. That said, because we're only going to do those 3 areas within Kahidi, if we've done 275 to date, there's 627 homes that are built out in Kahidi. We should be able to finish the inspections in the next couple of weeks. We have purchased the materials to install risers on 50 of the 300-gallon tanks and 200 of the 700 or 1,000-gallon tanks that might be installed. So we will be going back and starting to install those risers in the areas that we're not monitoring flow. Once we get the data for the flow without the risers, we'll go back into those neighborhoods and put the risers on there. So I think this is a very comprehensive plan. It'll give us the data we need. It'll also give us the data that we need to give to Jacobs for when they go forward with looking at the redesign of the Kahidi pump station, the main pump station there in Kahidi. So I think that's pretty much what I wanted to cover. Yeah. So I've already So I covered all of that information. The other thing we're going to do is, as John said, we're going to go ahead and go to the board and ask for them to approve all of those. And this is really for the board slide. I didn't really need this on here, but so for those of you that go to the board meeting next week, this is what I'll be covering. So, John, thank you very much. I appreciate the time. Thank you very much, folks.
Judy, you want to say a word or two about utility forms?
I get the fun topic of complying with rules. So let's see, how do we get to the first slide? This is new for me. Okay, there we go. As a public utility who is providing services for which monthly payments are provided, or must be made every month, we are required to follow the red flag rules of the federal government. So in 2020, we developed our policy, our red flag policy, which to abide by these rules. And to do this, we require verification of customer identity using two forms of identification, one that requires a photo ID and one is your social security number. These requirements are in line with what other utility companies are requiring: LUB, TAS, KUB, LCUB, and First Utility are ones that I specifically looked at, and our policies are very much in line with theirs. And again, this applies to all utility accounts to ensure that we are safely handling your personal identification information and mitigating and detecting identity theft. When we receive this information, we run a soft credit check through a utility company based credit check company, and it will return back and let us know if there is a problem with that social security number. And it would also detect if there was a credit risk in which we would require a deposit for a period of time from you. Our water and sewer procedure manual highlights are given next. We have an application requirement for all property owners, tenants, and authorized agents. Everyone must complete the application as you open a new account. The bills are due on the 15th day from the date that is printed on your bill. There is a 5-day grace period provided for in that as well. And if your bill is late, then you will incur a late fee on the entire unpaid balance of the bill. If your account is past due for 40 days, your account is subject to disconnection, and then there's a reconnection fee of $75. And we looked into the rules of the red flag policy, and we are not required, the rules do not require that we go back and gather the information from existing customers that had accounts prior to the date that we enacted the policy. The rules give us pretty broad authority to implement the rules as we see fit, as long as we feel like we're detecting any identity theft that might be existing. And our policy, the way we implement it by asking for new residents and changes in account ownership, does meet the requirements. Okay, the terms of service were implemented in 2019. And again, these are pretty consistent with rules that you should already probably be familiar with that were from the Blue Book or our CNRs. Again, you're asked to sign the terms of service contract before you initiate your water and sewer services. It's more just acknowledging receipt of the rules. We've had trouble in the past, so I'm told, since I've not been here all that long, with folks doing things around their tanks to impede access to the tank, like building fences or building a bridge over your tank or whatever. So this is just kind of a reminder of what some of those rules are. And It also reminds you that you need to pay your bill on time, or you could risk having your service disconnected. And it says if the property is sold, subdivided, or leased, then a new agreement will be required. So I think that covers about everything from there. So, anything else?
Thank you, Judy. One quick announcement I could have mentioned at the top that, as was mentioned in the latest telegram, the reserve funding bill did not get submitted to legislature this year. And we will investigate doing it the old-fashioned way and changes to the CNR, but it's going to be years before that would ever take place. We've got our lawyer investigating the ever-evolving rules regarding electronic document signing and how it relates to something of this nature of changing a declaration. He admits the rules change every single year, and we're getting closer, he thinks, to being able to implement a process by which we can do that. Of course, we've got to be able to validate every signature. In order to do that, you typically have to have photo ID of some sort and proof that they're a property owner in good standing, and that's sometimes hard to do electronically. But we're looking into it. We're not going to have any definitive go-forward plan for probably many months. And then even if we got the required 4,000 signatures and submitted it to the Loudoun County Registrar, it would still have to take a one-year waiting period before it would become effective. So in the end, we won't have a buy-in fee for at least 3 to 4 years, best case. But we're going to continue to investigate it. I was going to have Beth talk a little bit about HelpSpot. I think it's an underutilized resource in the village, and it's a very valuable one, the people that do utilize it.
Hello. So we thought we would just kind of remind some people and educate some people of a very helpful and useful tool that we have for communications, and that is called HelpSpot. You can ask questions anytime and get assistance. There's also a resource guide on there, as well as frequently asked questions. And so what I wanted to point out is where on the website you can find that. So on the bottom of every page of the POA website is a contact form, and this stays with you no matter what page you visit. And so the one there with the little headphones, like you're gonna call and get help, if you will click on that button, that is gonna take you to this website. And you can submit a request, you can check on a request. So if you previously submitted one and you wanna follow up, you keep a little ticket number, it'll be emailed to you, and you can check on that request there. There's also a knowledge book, and then also frequently asked questions that most people we find ask regularly. And it can be on any topic, and once it comes in, the admin will assign it to the appropriate director, and then they will respond to you. So we just wanted to share that with you. We don't have a questions one, so time for questions.
Okay, well, that's the end of our pre-prepared part of this meeting, so at this point we'll open it up to comments and questions. We as the board will do our best to answer them, or we may call on staff to potentially answer a question. Again, Kevin, if you could go back to the open forum guidelines, we'll keep those up there so people don't lose sight of that, and have at it.
You can start after the introduction. Give me 15 seconds introduction, and I will not filibuster. My name is Pat White. I've lived in the village for 17 years, and as most people know, if they've been watching board meetings, I live at 304 Skiatook Circle in Coity. So, I realize there are residents of Tellico Village who have children, residents that are not retired and remain employed. I also realize that anyone who desires to purchase property, a home, or wants to live in Tellico Village can do so. I make this statement to avoid the social media controversy of Tellico Village being a retirement community over 55 or et cetera. Most of us, I would even go so far as to state the vast majority of us, are retirement age. Look your left and right and you'll see what I mean. All of us, whether old, young, retired, or still employed, chose Tellico Village as home after much research. There have been 36 plus years of POA advisory board volunteer property owners, volunteer POA board members, POA staff that made the Tellico Village the community that we chose to move our assets, our belonging, our life, and call this place home. It is interesting that a few property owners use the term lack of trust regarding the governance and management of Tellico Village, when in fact these very same property owners chose to make this place home. They literally moved their lives to Tellico Village based on decades of building this community to a level that they personally chose, which I find curious. And now the reason for me speaking today. These few people, through their access to social media, which is available to the world, by the way, are now in the process of shooting themselves and the rest of us in the foot by spreading misleading information regarding home sales. Their insinuation is that we are fleeing Tellico Village due to actions taken by our property owners who serve on the POA Board, Finance Advisory Committee, and Public Services Advisory Committee. Fleeing Tellico Village to the tune, as they say in social media, of 200 homes being listed for sale. I have repeated the following statement many times in public. Verified the information you are being presented, including the information I provide today. There were 323 homes listed on MLS in 21, 343 in 22, and 380 in 23. 100% of these homes have been sold. New residents moved in, and on top of these sales, Tellico Village has seen new home builds set records for the last 3 years. Recall the past social media complaints on our rapid growth. Oh man, am I over? Okay, I speak today because this misleading information insinuating that there are major issues causing residents to flee Tellico Village is read by prospective buyers. Buyers that could cost you, the invested Tellico Village property owner, a home sale or at least home equity value. These few people are now in your pocket, and that's why I'm talking, because you're in my pocket as well. I am life in Tellico Village, as are each of you. Do you sincerely believe this misleading information expounded by a very small group of people is true? And if you sincerely believe they're misleading innuendos, do you not ask yourself the question, if what they say is true, why are they not selling their homes? They're playing with your life. And finally, verify what I have said today.
Jeff Berger, Jeff Berger, Tellico neighborhood, Jeff B. on next door. I guess the first thing I'd like to commend the board for is doing the right thing, getting an interim manager in here and regrouping. Kudos to you guys for making that decision. I think we have a lot of regrouping to do in the village with respect to how are we going to govern the thing going forward? How are we going to organize? How are we going to, are we going to be a village that's continuing to add more and more fees, trying to add more and more amenities? Are we going to go back to the roots of what the village started as? So those are things that I'm looking forward to. Focus groups, town halls, surveys, trying to find out more. The other thing I wanted to commend the board on, and John, you in particular, was your leadership when you started about communication and how we're starting to solve that problem, I think, with a new platform. Talk to Ed. Thank you, Ed, for what you're working on now in terms of trying to replace Nextdoor for the back and forth that we have regarding the community. So I commend you for that, too. Now, I'm going to be a dog on a bone, which is my habit, on some things. The first thing is the tap fee, the $80 tap fee. I think that, and John, just to go back to why you didn't vote for it, I think you used a different, more colorful term, but I'll use the word swag to describe. We really didn't have a firm grasp on the projects and the costs 7 months ago. And I still think it's in tremendous flux right now. We had 2 new board members come on board, and they challenged the 36 million, now 37. And so what does that look like? And what it looks like to me is we're still trying to figure out what the number is. So until we do that, especially since you've designed TAP to be flexible in terms of it going up or down or pausing, I'd like to see a board vote at the next board meeting to see whether we should pause the fee. Yep. The other thing quickly is on the water rates. So the water rates just irritate me because I think we're doing this wrong. I think we've overbilled for the last several years. We're up to, in my calculations, 170% on the average usage in the US. And I think we need to take a step back on that. I've looked at your benchmark data. I would be pleased to share what I've found to be some flaws in that. And I think we need to look at that, and we need to bring our rates in alignment with the rest of the communities. Finally, the reserve study, we are so way off on that, guys, at least 50% off. So that's another reason to pause the TAP fee. Thank you.
Ron Hansen, been here for 5 years. I'll read quickly. I believe our most pressing problem right now is that our board is currently collecting over $4,800 per household over 5 years based on a Jacob study which was flawed and projected a $36 million expense to fix water sewer issues. That study has since been flawed and it is being redone. The premise on which the need for the $4,800 was based has evaporated, but has the $80 fee gone away? Also, no. You continue to collect a large sum of money, but with no clearly defined need. The board has in essence said, oh, we have a big expense, so I will collect your money to meet the big expense. Oh no, we don't have a big expense, but I will continue to collect your money anyway. In addition, after presenting false information to the board regarding villager sentiment, immediately before a vote to proceed to the legislature regarding a wrongly labeled buy-in fee, the board was aiming to give themselves a $5,000 stake in the equity of every home in the village that was sold in which one party was not a resident. Obviously, current residents would have borne some of the cost of that, at what should accurately have been labeled a real estate transaction tax. The burden of paying that tax would almost certainly have been shared by both parties, depending on the negotiations in each transaction. It was not a buy-in fee. Other communities have buy-in fees and they're written into their bylaws. We don't. By so labeling it, the vote to proceed with the legislature was tainted. I would hope that if the board had known the truth, that a majority of villagers were against that action, that they would have voted to carry out the will of the majority. It would have raised the cost of living in Tellico Village, hurt our home values, and made Tellico Village less competitive in local real estate markets. So if you put the two together, our board has attempted, outside of the covenants and restrictions, to award themselves $9,800 in the last 6 months per village household with no certain or accurate need for the $9,800. Those actions, especially when legally questionable, especially when the board has apparently ignored the mechanisms for raising revenue provided in our covenants and restrictions, raise a huge red flag. It cultivates distrust, denigrates villager sentiment, and only the board can heal the damage that has been done and restore the trust which we should have in each other. There are two main actions that would accomplish this. Number one, recommit yourselves, please, to operating within the boundaries of our covenants and restrictions which exist between us. Number two, this flows from the first. Stop the $80 fee, pause it until the need has been defined and the majority of villagers approve it. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Ed Gorman. I'm here today because I was the one who had my water turned off twice, once today and back in January 7th, for not turning in a utility application and the terms of service agreement. First of all, the terms of service agreement has never been explained to me, and I was hoping today that they would have explained the purpose of it. There's a lot of verbiage in there that they didn't even put up today. Can you raise this for me? Yep, that's good. Thank you. So anyway, if you read some of this in here, it kind of contradicts our regulations in our handbook. Basically, like item number 10, all pressure regulators, valves, service lines, backflow preventers, and other devices located on the customer's side of the meter are sole responsibility of the customers. Basically, they're taking all the liability away from the POA and putting it on the customer. You know, what does all the service lines include? Is that just water or is it sewer? They never explained anything. And down here at the bottom, once you sign this thing, it becomes a contract. And it says right down here that the POA has the right to continue to have the right to make, amend, enforce, and change any policy, rules, or regulations that may be necessary. And then basically enforce any amount that they want to charge us. Like in my case, they shut my water off because I didn't sign the terms of service agreement. And to me, it's ludicrous. I mean, basically, the utility application is basically to show that you're not a credit risk. I lived here for 15 years. I don't think that's being a credit risk when I've paid my bills every month. So that's pretty much what I have to say. And I think they should have displayed the whole terms of service contract up here so everyone could read it and then make your own decisions. And I don't understand how they can treat half the people different than the other half of the people. We're supposed to be one village, and everyone should be liable, have to do the same documents as everybody else. So if you could explain all that to me, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
I guess make one comment about that. We're not treating anybody different. This policy went into place in 2020. Every new account opened since it went into place has to do the exact same application and terms of service. And according to the law, we did not have to go back and make everybody, all the 4,000 people prior to that, fill out the forms. This was a new law that was enacted that we're complying with. So we could have went back and tried to get forms from all 4,000 people that have been here 30 years, but that would be an extremely costly and time-consuming effort. This was meant to comply with the red flag rules to prevent identity theft. So anyways, we're just following the rules. The terms of service are almost identical. If you pull up terms of service for TAS, it's almost the identical wording. Same thing with LUB. No difference. The only difference is they just have a line in there that says by applying for service, you agree to those terms of service. They probably don't even give them to you. We give them to you to, to know exactly what's in there, but it's identical.
My name is Barry Coro. I live in Tomotley Cove. I have 3 questions and a suggestion. With regard to TAP, Scott, please don't answer till I say all the 3 questions. Then that's my time, okay? But in terms of when this was presented, the $36 million, and Chet had a town hall meeting here, very well presented. Everybody applauded, so forth. And since that time, there's been absolute chaos because what we were presented initially evidently could change and could change significantly. And Scott, the question for you is, in one of those town hall meetings, you have said that you're not going to recommend anything until you absolutely are sure of the source of the problem. The question I would like you to answer after I say the rest of it, okay, is if you find and the source of the overflow in the tanks and we repair all those, or if LCBU increases the size of that line and we can tap into it, do we still need to replace the pumps? Okay, do we still need to upgrade them? That's the first question. The second question is for you, John. You've heard through all of these meetings, board meetings and so forth, questioning the $80. My question to you is, what's the explanation for the board, from the board as to why they will not pause that till we absolutely know what's required, okay? The other thing I want to mention is the water bills, regardless of the $80. People were paying $400 in the summer to irrigate. Will the board consider getting another meter for irrigation, which a lot of municipalities allow, which would save people a lot? The sewer side of it would not apply. So will the board consider that? And the last thing is a suggestion. Before we spend money to try to do the covenants and restrictions and revise that for the buy-in fee, please take a survey of the people to get a feeling of whether or not they support it. If they don't support it to a significant amount, we're just wasting our money to try to change the covenants restriction, because the same thing's going to happen. They're not going to vote for it. Thank you.
I guess one comment about the survey comment, and the prior gentleman that said the vast majority of people oppose it. That would be contradictory to the HOA survey that was just done. They surveyed their 3,000 some odd members, and 74.5% were in favor of the buy-in fee. So I would say, based on that number of surveys, a vast majority are in favor of it.
I still think you ought to run another one, because evidently Russell didn't want to present it because he didn't get a clear indication of that. All I'm saying is take another survey, please.
John, let me, I'll address the question about the, we're working on the INI. The main pump station has many problems that are not just flow-related problems. So we are looking at moving forward with the redesign on that. That one needs to be done. Kahidi definitely needs to be done, so we're looking at that. But as part of the engineering study that Jacobs will be doing, we'll be assessing what is the inflow. Based on the survey, the pilot study that we're doing, as I said, we'll probably finish Kahidi, at least the inspections, by the end of February, maybe the first week or so of March. The remediation, I don't know how quickly that will take. We're looking at the resources. I'm working to get that estimate right now. The people that do that right now are Public Works. They did no installations today because they were fixing a tank that had water pouring into it because of a tree root just damaged the tank, and they were having to deal with that. So we're looking at the resources that we need to do that. I agree that we are, as we move forward, before I go to the board and ask for them to continue to build anything, we will make sure we've got the right design on all of those and that they're absolutely needed. And with this going out for bids, the one nice thing that'll do is that'll allow us to compare what Jacobs estimated versus what a real bid is and all. And let me just point out, and I don't mean to take too long, but I've heard the people say it's back of the envelope, back of the napkin estimates. That was, I don't know where that came from. That was a mischaracterization. Jacobs did a Class 5 cost estimate at the 10% design when they did the study. Class 5 cost estimates are based on parametric studies from what they have done. It's not just a napkin study. It's not just a guess. It is based on their experience and having designed these kinds of systems all around the country, and based on what that costs, based on what ours looks like compared to those, and it's been refined now as we move forward with this, and as we go out to bids, we'll be able to say, this is what it cost us to build this, this is what they said, how does that align? And then that information will be presented to the board so that they can address some of the other questions that have come up here today. That's beyond, I give them the data, what they do with it is up to them. And I'm not trying to just get out of it, but I stay in my lane and I'll let them deal with their lane, so thank you.
Tom, would you care to answer my question? What's the board's rationale for not pausing it? I asked that question, I'm waiting for a return.
can hear you. You're not at the microphone. It's somebody else's turn.
I know, but you didn't answer my question. My question is, what is the board's rationale for not pausing the $80?
We committed to reevaluate it mid-year, and we're committed to do that. We'll have a lot more information. We'll have a new reserve study. We'll have better visibility to all the projects. So we'll be in a position to do what we said we're going to do, is reevaluate it mid-year.
How long is that going to take?
Mid-year.
Mid-year? And you're going to charge people $80 a month for mid-year when knowing it's going to be less than the $36 million?
Do you know it's going to be less?
There's a great possibility and even a probability it will.
Okay, there's probabilities.
Why don't we
I'm not going
wait?
to debate.
Why don't we wait till we know? It doesn't hurt us to pause for 4, 5, 6 months. It doesn't hurt us.
Well, we're committed to reevaluate mid-year, and we're going to do that.
The other thing is this on, I think? Yeah, we're getting a lot of reverberation up here, so it's hard to hear. I apologize. You know, that $80 fee was put in after an extensive review by the PSAC members that were on the committee at that point in time. It was also put in after a review by the FAC. One of the key elements of that was that we could not wait until we had final answers, because if you're going to bring a contractor in, the first thing they're going to ask for is, you got the money. And we needed to make sure we had sufficient cash flow to be able to fund those projects, which were felt to be absolutely key, because the one thing that I know and I believe many others are committed to is the fact that we want to have the water resources available to all residents and the wastewater service that can be sustained and maintained without having the possibility of extensive overflows or disruptions. And that was a key element of why those votes were taken and what the rationale was behind it. We could debate that till the cows come home, but I just wanted to share that none of that was done or put in place without some pretty extensive review and discussions at the advisory committee levels and then at the board level.
Okay, my turn? All right. My name's Chris Hoffer. Good afternoon. Carla Johnson, right? I liked your presentation, and I think that is an excellent idea of how we fund once in the community. So I support your effort, and the only thing that I have a little precaution on that is I saw there was no money in the maintenance of the equipment. So it's not going to be 100% covered, correct? The POA is going to have to maintain the equipment. Okay, that's okay. Well, we hope. We hope. Okay, but anyway, thank you. This tap fee, I know a lot of people have kind of dug their feet in. Mike, I certainly heard you say it. But when we don't know how much it's really going to cost, we're asking the residents to pay this $80 every single month. What I'd like to know from each of you right now, based on the information that we have and what's coming forward, John had said in a board meeting at one time that some of the figures were spitballed and that he didn't agree with it. Matter of fact, I believe you voted no against the fee at a board meeting. I'd like to hear, are you the only 5 board members that are here today that are up on the stage?
That's correct.
Okay, 5. So, Joel, I'd like to hear from you. Where do you stand on the $80 fee? Are you in favor of continuing it or not? I'd like to hear from each of you where you stand right now. Ed, you seem to be getting a little squirmy up there.
I mean, we will not do a vote up here on based on what you want. That'll be done at a board meeting.
I'm
But I mean,
asking you where you lean.
I think the majority stands with John here. We'll evaluate it at the end and middle of the year like we said we would. At that point, we'll have more data. And we have not seen any difference from the 36 million right now, other than maybe 4 million from a tank, which is on hold, not gone away.
Well, you're starting to see it, but that's, you can be in denial.
Until we see that and we have hard data on that, we're not going to make a change.
Yeah, I figured that, but just know that a tremendous amount of people did vote for change in the last election. So the other thing I'd like to say is yes, Joel.
Sorry. The only reason I'm going to say something is because I think a few of you have weighed in, so I think it's only fair that I would weigh and say I'm in favor of pausing it immediately.
Mike, you have any opinion?
Right now, I'm in favor. I wasn't in favor of the fee to start with. I don't think we had the proper data. I commend Scott right now for going around and helping to accrue the proper data.
Agreed.
And I am not in favor of having the fee at this time.
Not in.
Pausing.
Okay. I think we already know where you're at, right? Oh, excuse me. Okay, John, could you answer that question?
I answered it. We're going to reevaluate.
All right. Going to reevaluate. Hopefully it's quicker than 6 months. Thank you.
My name is Brian Wethington. Okay. Well, I can talk, right? So, I think you guys probably all know where I stand with this contract. I didn't have to sign one, fortunately, but, you know, there's a lot of people in here that do. And the primary change in this water contract that you guys have that's different from Taz and everyone else is the clause in the middle of it. The clause that states that, including, where is it at? It says, it is further that the POA has the right and shall continue to have the right to make, amend, and enforce any policy rules or regulations that may be necessary or proper regarding any POA service. Okay? There's nothing in the Taz contract like that. The Loudoun County contract, nothing. That pertains particularly to us as a community and the residents that live here, right? So, and that's specifically any policy. So that, to me, should be removed out of this contract. And I personally would not sign that contract. No matter how much, you shut my water off, I would have just went and got a lawyer immediately. I wouldn't have signed it under duress. And I just don't feel like, man, what kind of community do we live in? Where you're writing stuff like this in a contract to the own residents that elected your butts. Think about that. You're putting something like that in a contract. Our own people in our own community. You know, you all sit up here and you're all signing NDAs. You're board members. You're the last people that should be signing NDAs. Did you not read the Tennessee Nonprofit Act? Did you not read a guideline to being a board member? The people that should be signing NDAs are these people here, the employees, not our board members that we elected to represent us. Get it together, fellas.
John Olson, Tanasi. Talking on water, some projects looking at the budget book of 2024, which I believe is a 5-year plan. There is the elevated tank in there for $9.5 million, funding through 2028. There is also a Coyote water storage upgrade project for $7.5 million. What's that?
if you said 2024. I'm not sure that that project is still in there for 2025 in the out years, for the 2025 budget that was put together. The focus a lot of times is on the immediate upcoming year, but there was more focus put on the out years during the 2025 budget process conducted last fall. So I think, John, if you look at the 2025 budget and the capital program or reserve account program, you won't find the second item that you mentioned in that listing. You'll find the first one, I agree, because that was part of the 5-year plan, but you won't find the second one. That was removed out.
Just an FYI, Jim Hockey did a water study originally that included a booster tank at Chota and the Coyote project you're speaking of. That's since been revised with the addition of the LUB tank at Watt Cemetery Road, and we're currently looking at the water storage tank at Chota. So that's the reason it was still in there. It's no longer in the budget.
Because I thought the 2023 Jacobs study said it wasn't needed, which is 2 years ago.
Jacobs didn't do a 23 water study.
Pardon me?
Jacobs did not do a 2023 water study to my knowledge.
They did an elevated tank storage study.
Okay, that tank, yes, and that is eliminating that line that you see in that budget.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
I think the water projects should undergo the same rigorous review that the I&I projects went under. I look at them and I see what I consider a lot of errors. Thank you.
We are doing some testing. I know Scott said been doing some testing on the water pressure in different areas, so that is being done.
Hey there, this will be quick. John, for you, I did look at the TAS agreement for the terms of service, and ours is essentially the same, so I'm agreeing with that. In fact, it almost looks like it was plagiarized, so maybe our lawyer works for them too, and he got permission. But having said that, the last paragraph is the issue for me, and I suspect most people that read this thing. So I've highlighted the areas. Essentially what it says is if the sun comes up tomorrow, the POA can turn off your water. And I just think that's wrong. So I'm going to ask that your attorney review this, take that broad language out, and put it back in alignment with the other, like LUB and TAS. I'll give this to Judy. Thanks.
Hi, this is Gary Zika. I've got some, the upcoming board, your next meeting, you've got a couple items to vote on. And I was at the PSAC meeting, so I did hear what they were proposing to pass on to you. And I don't agree with either one of them. The first one is sending the main lift station drawings to TDAC for their approval, and then sending that package out to bid for the contractors. That was a component of a system that included this wastewater storage tank and a secondary lift station to supply that. The new lift station that is being proposed is less than what we have today. And when you say, well, how much less? Well, the existing tank is 20-some thousand gallons. When I say tank, the wet well tank, that's where the effluent comes into the lift station, and it's a storage tank underground. And the pumps are located in there, and they pump it out to LUB. The new lift station is 40% less in size, less than 10,000 gallons. And you say, well, that's only, what, 10, 12,000 gallons different. The overflows that we've had over the last 3 years are in a range between 2,000 and 5,000 gallons. You just took that whole cushion out of the system. The same thing with the pumps. The existing pumps that we have today could pump more to LUB when they could receive it. And most of the time they can receive the wastewater from us. If you put smaller pumps in, you're not going to be able to pump it. So what's going to happen is you're going to have more overflows because you have a main lift station that is smaller in capacity. And so that's the one item. The other item is going out the bid is you're bidding something that's downsizing our main lift station because it's only a component what Jacobs designed was the wastewater tank, the secondary lift station, and the main lift station. You can't do a component without shooting yourself in the foot in the next rain event. And Scott, when you talked about all the projects on the tap, being Jacobs had engineering estimates done, they had it for the elevated water tank, and they had it for the wastewater, the main lift station with the pump. The other 3 projects, Kahiti, they did not. They didn't have it for the odor control, and they didn't have it for the secondary lift stations throughout the village. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, I would like to correct a misstatement. I did not say vast majority when I talked about the poll with the buy-in fee, which is not a buy-in fee. I'm asking for truth in labeling. That is a real estate transaction fee. It's going to raise the cost of every house by $5,000 if it had passed. And you talk about pursuing it further. Those 2 polls that were taken were conflated. The poll that was taken locally put the issue of going to the legislature and a buy-in fee together in one question. What went to Lowell Russell, our representative, was simply, should we go to the legislature to try to get action? That is a clear sidestep of our covenants and restrictions. And I have a friend who's been in direct contact with Mr. Russell, and he said the latest poll was 55% against, 45% for. And I want to correct that misinformation which was presented just a few minutes ago. Those 2 polls were different, and they were very differently presented right before the board took the vote. Mr. Orr, you said the local poll was running 3 or 4 to 1 in favor of going to the legislature and having a buy-in fee. Mr. Russell immediately came out with an email which said that was false. He said it was not. He said it was split 50-50, and he published it for everybody to see. That vote, and I said so at the time, and we were all in the same room, that vote was premature, and that vote was tainted. And that vote breaks trust between residents and our board representatives.
Just turn it down. Hello, my name is Judy Gorman, and I wouldn't be standing here today if somebody would have just answered our questions. That's all we wanted, was just questions answered. We've lived here for 15 years, and moved into a new home, yes, we did, but after a year and a half of moving into that home, we get a letter saying that we have to sign this terms of agreement and this application fee, okay? We tried to approach people and get our questions answered, and we didn't. So therefore, we have had our water turned off. And John, you talked about your vacation being messed up because of all of this. I was on vacation too. And I had somebody go and check and tell me they checked on my house and said, you have no water. Okay? My bathtubs are filled up with water because we were told you were going to do it again, and you did it. So we turned in our application with our Social Security numbers and all of that, which we've been here for 15 years. We've done what you've asked us to do, but I don't think it's fair. You said, yeah, I can't go back on these 4,000 people and ask them to sign this terms of agreement. Is that covering your all's butt? Because it's not covering ours. I didn't ask for this fight. I did not ask for this fight. I would not be standing here if one of you would have answered my questions.
Teresa Reed, thanks for being here. And I genuinely want to thank you for your service on the board, and I'm certain that everybody here and everybody watching feels the same way. I can attest to all you guys, I'm not doing any work, but I know that they work hard, and I know they spend a lot of time doing stuff for us. Just if you continue to try to keep open lines of communication and do what's right for the community, I think that's going to go miles. I did want to say, John, that you had referenced the HOA survey, which I thought was wonderful that the HOA did a survey, and I hope that they are more instrumental in doing this on a regular basis to get how the villagers feel to you, because I think it's going to help you guys make better decisions. Of those 3,600 surveys, emails that they sent out, they only had 18% response. And I'm not sure if they had a control on anybody being able to vote more than once. So I thought that was a relevant piece. But what I really wanted to ask I just want to ask about the simulators. In the early presentation, they talked about adding simulators to Tanasi. I think the simulators are great, but I hope we use them. I live in Tokwa. 10 days, 2 weeks, I think our golf course was closed because of weather. I get it. But if those simulators had been open, I would have loved to have gone out and played golf at a simulator. I know you've heard me say this. I've stood up here several times in the last couple of years and mentioned my son in California, and that is something we regularly do. It's a walking distance from his house to go up, and we spend $45 for an hour to go play golf. We actually can even play zombie dodgeball because my daughter-in-law doesn't play golf. And it arguably is some of the most fun we've ever had. And I hope if we add the simulators to Tanasi, it'll be a revenue generator. I think the ones at Tokwa should be a revenue generator. So I just wanted to make that mention. Thank you very much.
Robin Francisco. I've been here for 3 years, and I live in Chautauqua Cove. My question is it possible for the POA to create or put the list of those that are waiting for boat slips and/or jet ski slips? Can they post it so that we can go on there to see where we're at on the list as opposed to calling in or having to walk in to find out? That way there's a little bit more, I guess, transparency so that people don't get moved up ahead of you or you get moved down on the list. That's all I'm asking. Thank you.
And I'll just offer, I don't think it's a good practice for us to publish a list with all the names on. What I think we can do, and there's a very capable individual by the name, I think, of Caitlin. She can tell you where you stand on the list. We recognize that there are, I think, somewhere in the range of 140 boat slip requests out there right now. I don't know the jet ski number, but you can be told where you're at approximately on the list, but to publish a list of all the names, I'm not sure that that would be prudent.
Having been there and done that, let me first say that I respect every one of the board members and what you're trying to do. Each and every one of you, I have no doubt, is doing what they feel is best for the community, okay? So it also gives me the right to disagree, as I'm sure you do in the board. The quick thing, John, is one of the things that you didn't answer. Would the board consider doing a feasibility study of putting a separate meter for irrigation, determining what that would cost, and maybe the homeowner would be willing to pay for that? But that would be a way to alleviate all the dialogue and all the confusion and so forth and the irritation of the high water bills.
I guess I'll start and say every homeowner has the right to currently to request a separate meter be installed, but that comes at a fee. And if you do the economics, it's not very advantageous. In addition, in some cases, there's a handful of cases where folks have put meters in, but they planned that right up front when they were building their house. I think to add it after the fact If you look at the economics, that's going to be pretty challenging. But every homeowner has the right to make that request currently.
There's an argument against that, okay? I understand you're right. But the POA has undertaken the garbage service, okay, because it saves the homeowners money. All I'm saying is, why wouldn't the POA board take that study and determine what the costs are and realistically what the homeowner would have to pay for it? I would guarantee you that over a period of time, they would recover that cost versus continuing to pay the sewer rate on top of the water bill for irrigation.
Good afternoon. My name is Harry Westcott. I've lived in the village for 27 years. I've seen a lot of boards come and a lot of boards go. I've seen some good boards and I've seen some not so good boards. The jury is still out on this board in my mind. But in any event, I want to compliment you gentlemen for even taking the role as a board member, because it's a thankless job, I'm sure. Two things I want to bring up, and you'll be happy to know it has nothing to do with water, nothing to do with sewer, nothing to do with holding tanks, pump stations, $80 fees, nothing like that. The two issues are, I retired from an international corporation as a purchasing manager. The last 2 years of my career, we were given an edict to revise our purchasing process, and it became a very robust process. It was difficult initially for our suppliers, but when they bought into it, they saw the advantage of what our system was. I had suspected from day one, when I came down here 27 years ago, that we did not have a robust purchasing system. So I think that would be one thing that should be on our plate to look at after all these other issues are resolved. Number two, I didn't realize until a month ago that we had a COO. And the COO is the second highest paying job of any employee in the village. And I'm wondering, did we have a COO when I first came here 27 years ago? And if we didn't, how did we survive? So what I would suggest to you folks is take a look at what the responsibilities are of a COO. Take a look at what the pay range is for a COO, and before you pull the trigger to hire another one, make a determination whether we even need a COO. Thank you very much.
I'll address your first question. So
Sure.
Jeff DeGulia, who's sitting right there in the checkered shirt, is our purchasing manager. And the POA has improved their purchasing processes. But what's even going to be a better improvement is we are currently in the process of installing Sage Intech accounting software, which will have a better procurement process built in with the software going forward. So the short answer is yes, we are trying to make improvements there. We have, and I think we will be able to enhance it even further.
Okay, and then in reply to that, I would tell you that I'm not saying ours was the best one, but it was very robust. It yielded good paybacks on from our suppliers. And when our suppliers got used to it, they were happy with it. And it was difficult to implement, but we got the job done. So it's a little unique system, probably one you've never heard of before, but it worked. Oh, that buzzed me out. Thank you.
Hello, David Taylor, Mialacqua. I've got three, what I hope are relatively simple questions. If you, yeah. If you would pause that, I'd just soon get them answered in order. And for our great presenter on the progress with the TAP and all of that. If this no tank plan that you were describing works, what's going to be the rough total cost? I mean, we heard TAP 1.0 was going to be 30-some million. If we don't have to do the tank, if 5-inch risers work and so on, do you have an idea? What are we talking about?
The estimated cost for the tank was about $6.5 million.
So it would be $6.5 million less, but you need to spend all the rest of it?
We are studying that, so I can't give you an answer on that. That's why I said, what if we don't do the tank, that's what would be eliminated from that. But I don't know on the rest of those.
Okay.
The other thing on this, the odor control is estimates and things are coming a lot higher than was originally estimated too. So, and that is something we definitely have to do. So where we may get some money back from the tank, we're probably going to need to add more money on for the odor control.
Okay. You're telling me there's inflation. Who knew? Hey, I'd appreciate it if you'd pause that thing while they're answering. It's not really fair not to. Second question, you all are getting a new reserve study, which is a great thing. You're reviewing the TAP 2.0 idea, which is a great thing. Would you please consider a third source of data, which would be a thorough professional benchmarking study of truly comparable communities in terms of everything we pay out, everything we take in? I think it would be really smart if you waited to decide on the whole way forward until you've got all three of those things. John, would you consider that?
Benchmarking what, though, exactly?
All of our outgo and income. How much are we subsidizing, for instance, various things in the village? How much are we paying people? How much are we charging people for water? How much are we charging for, all the income and outgo? I don't think it would be that hard. I mean, you did a benchmarking study, as you were describing in the beginning here. You said you compared, our processes for these meetings with comparable communities. That's the kind of thing I'm talking about.
Well, people don't publish salaries online that we can compare to, and every community is different. We have 3 golf courses, others have 1. It's apples and oranges as long-range planning tried to communicate when they did theirs. It was very, very difficult to try to get comparison because every community is so different.
But I do think, and Phil Brenner is sitting there, he and his committee last year did what I thought was, given the task, an outstanding job showing lots of comparable data between Tellico and various other types of communities. They worked long hours to put that data together. And the result of that study is Tellico compares very competitively in a favorable manner to other communities that were looked at. And that was done through their volunteer service at no cost.
If it were possible to publish a summary of that, might be useful. Maybe it is. I haven't seen it. Okay, if it's on the website.
It's on the website, and you can also go back, and I forget which month I want to say September, August. If you go back and look at the video for the August meeting, you'll get not only the slides, but also Phil's excellent commentary that goes with it.
Okay, last question. You heard a lot today about the $80 fee. I'm one of those who feels you ought to pause it, but I would ask you, if when you reach mid-year, John, and you say you're going to review, and it turns out that has produced more money than is needed, will you refund the excess?
It couldn't possibly produce more than is needed, right? Because if we're talking, even if it's 30 million, it'll only produce 5 million. So it can't possibly produce more than is needed.
It's not the only source of money, though.
No, but we're going to evaluate the whole thing, not just the $80. We're going to look at water rates again this year. We're taking a whole fresh look at everything with our change in leadership now.
And the other thing I just point out is the $80 fee is being accounted for separately. It's put in a separate reserve account, and it can only be used by the effect of the motion that was made and approved at the board meeting on water and sewer assets. When the 5 projects are done, that's not going to be the end of spending on water and sewer projects. So I'm just trying to give the guidelines and the guardrails that we put around that. It's not going to be spent on some miscellaneous type item.
If you were doing that with all the markup on the water fees, that would be even more meaningful. I've got one other thing to say, but I'm going to quit a little early and circle back. Different topic.
We have a 5-minute warning before we have to close down because for the church, so please make your comments quickly if you can.
Gary Zeke again. One of the other items that you've got on the board agenda for next week was on the Kahiti, on the lift station up there doing, I guess, awarding to Jacobs Engineering for additional work. And I think what Scott's doing now is putting meters on and getting some useful data for wet weather events. The Jacobs report, as far as I know, doesn't include any of that from the preliminary engineering that they did. And one of the things we talked about or had comments in the past has been, why don't you go out for a request for proposal to other engineering firms and get second opinions? Because you get 3 or 4 people, engineering firms, instead of being a cash cow to Jacobs Engineering, and that's what we are out in the industry, you go outside of this village, we're known as the cash cow. That's an insult, so I guess I'm breaking the rules, but that's what we are to Jacobs Engineers right now. We need to go a request for proposal, and when the Tahitians and everybody who's listening, Ed, you're listening, is the Jacobs Engineering has the wastewater tank for Kahiti, and it's in the TAP program, says the tank. It's at the end of the driving range, and I think everybody in Kahiti is going to be able to see that tank. Thank you.
How you doing? Louis Kozlowski from Chota. First thing, the water infiltration, that's basically the water going into our tanks and being pumped out? Is what you're saying?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, you're talking about the 5-inch
Yes,
extension. Aren't all our tanks, the injection tanks, run on a float system? So you're talking about the water running back up there. The only way the water is going to run back into a house if you have a power outage or something else, because it's going to drop to a certain level with the float level anyhow, right? So why would the 5-inch extension cause a problem with backflow into the house?
If the extension goes above the house and you get a failure of the float switch and that your pump doesn't come on and the tank does overflow, then it would back it in.
If you get a failure now, chances are your water's not going to run out of the house anyhow. You're going to have it back up out of the house anyhow because the water's not going to flow to the street, correct?
It would come out of the top of the tank.
All right, and what would be the cost to have all those extensions put on? And would it be possible, as much water as you're saying is going to the system to work with maybe Loudoun Utilities, to identify the spikes in electricity? If you're talking all this water is going in there, they should run a list of, how much electricity is used on these houses over that course of 3-day period or whatever, and see a spike in electricity. If that pump is running constantly to pump all that water out, you should see some kind of spike, correct? Your electrics, to run that pump, the amount of water you're talking going to our system, it's got to be a spike in electricity to get rid of the water, correct? It would. You understand what I'm saying?
In that space, we did put an hour meter on one of them. The problem with the spike in the electricity is you got to stand out there and watch the meter run, and nobody wants to do that.
But I'm from Long Island, New York.
Right,
I can tell you what you used overnight.
Right now, we're installing flow meters on source places to see where we're getting our I&I, and then we're going to narrow that back down later to find out the exact opportunity to improve.
All right, another reason I'm up here also, because the lady just mentioned the boat slips. I think there should be more transparency. And the reason I'm saying that was I went down to check on my boat slip when I was going to get one. Girl comes out, another girl comes out. Oh, we called you 3 times, 4788. You didn't answer. We gave you a slip where you're at the bottom of the list. I go, really? My number is 4798. So the only way I found out is by going down there. So instead of doing the right thing, and they give me, well, take this slip. Oh, okay, if I take that slip, will I go back to the top of the list? No, you go back to the bottom of the list. And I can understand the lady's frustration. Also, another thing is the parking. If you don't have a boat, you're not supposed to have a slip. I was just down the storage yard. There's over 50 empty slips down at that storage yard. I asked the girl, what number on my list? I'm 148 on the list. Those spots down there have not been used for quite a long time. I was down there last year, same things. So if you don't have something to put in there, They should do just like the boats. You have to give the slip up. Or we have all this land, there's over 200 slips that are needed to store boats, trailers, whatever. That's a major income if we have the empty land to put it somewhere.
As the additional slips, TVA will not give us any more permits. We asked them for that because we were trying to add another boat dock, and we are on this side of the lake. We've exceeded the allowed number of slips, and they didn't even realize that.
I'm talking about DPW for like storage.
Like dry storage?
The ground, yeah.
Dry storage at Public Works.
I'm talking about the Public Works right now.
Oh, okay. Oh, for store. I'm sorry. I thought you meant on the lake.
There's 50 empty spots right there right now. There's nothing in there. The last time I drove in, it was the same thing. And you have, like I said, I'm 148 on the list. There's probably 200 people. Why, if you have extra space somewhere, why don't they open it a yard to get some more income instead of this money being spent?
I didn't mean to interrupt you, but the list that we're talking about are people who have signed up for water docks, not the yard storage.
Right.
But what I would suggest you do is if you have a question on the yard storage, submit a HelpSpot ticket, and somebody on Matt Benoit's staff will get back to you to talk about that. That's independent of the boat storage on the water.
Correct. I did, like I said, I was passed up for a boat slip, and I talked to Chet about it, and he said, well, we're allowed to call you. It says in the bylaws you're supposed to send an email. This way it's time stamped and dated. So this problem won't arise again. That's the way it's supposed to be done, according to the bylaws, what I've read. Not a telephone call. If you have the wrong number or you can't read somebody's number, they just get put to the bottom of the list.
It's a quick one.
We're down to 5 minutes here, and we got to be out. So
It's quick.
can we ask 30-second comment from the three people in line, please?
It's a question. It's not a comment, except to thank you guys for your hard work, countless hours in a very difficult and tumultuous time. I thank you very much. My question is, I could swear, I could be wrong, but I could swear that I heard at a board meeting a while ago that if you built a house in Tellico Village, I mean, there's a lot of discussion about these buy-in fees. You know, a lot of people think it's a good idea, a lot of people don't think it's a good idea, but I could swear I heard at a board meeting that if you built your house here, you essentially paid the, whatever you wanted to call it, that type of fee in your purchase, in your construction agreement. So I just wanted to clarify that and see if we who have built houses have done a buy-in fee, or did I misunderstand things? No? Okay. $200 transfer fee. Okay, all right. Okay, that was a quick question, right?
Yeah,
okay.
$200 transfer fee. That's all that.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, but if you build, there are certainly fees in terms of your utility connections and all of that.
Yeah.
That's completely separate.
Yeah, no, this is like to help pay for the amenities that you're moving into, and, okay. No, got that one answered. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Colleen Marley, and I'm a resident of 13 years. And, excuse me, I've been sick. For over a decade, we had 4 generations here, and I have family that's been here for well over 20 years. And I do thank you guys, a great job today. This is the most non-hostile meeting I can remember seeing, and it's a nice atmosphere. I just wanted to make a quick comment about something about what you said, Pat, about the real estate. I'm a real estate appraiser. I'm an expert witness in all our different courts. I've actually provided my services to the POA, and I'm 4 jobs short from having completed 1,000 jobs in this community for appraisals or consulting of some sort. And I'm here to tell you, I get 20 calls a month now over the last 3 months. I have met with 22 couples. I have done jobs for 8 and appraisals that are going to be moving because of this. I very seriously doubt the Gormans will stay here. And there's something very wrong with that, very wrong. And so I really implore you guys to really back up and look like that, because it is taking its toll. We've had this conversation, Beth and I have had this conversation. I'm not saying it's, the sky is falling, but it is absolutely taking a toll on the community. And I work for a very large law firm, too, that I consult for, very good bottle of bourbon. I got 4 of them to sit around with me and hash out the terms of agreement amongst some other things, purely not litigation, just, friendly chatter and their opinions. I highly, highly recommend that y'all consider seeking new counsel and reevaluate our counsel. And you're absolutely operating illegally with some of the verbiage in that statement, John. That is not in any utility statements. It was initially, but then all this other juicy stuff got added, and it's completely inappropriate. And again, for a 14-year resident to have their water shut off, it just makes no sense to me. I also, and then my last comment is I verified the meters. Everybody just doesn't talk about the meters. We have some real issues with our meters. And someone from within the POA told me we had an elderly couple that got over a $10,000 water bill. Okay? That's not an accident. That's impossible. And these people were so scared, and they wouldn't even let anybody advocate for them. Okay, these are big problems. My aunt works for a lady, volunteers for her, that she's selling stuff for her every month so she can pay these fees. And one more thing, before I hear people say, oh, well, they didn't plan well for retirement, this, that, or the other, this woman owns a lakefront house free and clear, but she has no one, no family, no POA, she has dementia, she couldn't even get an equity line if she wanted to. That's a problem. It's a big problem. And I really encourage you to pause this fee because it just makes no sense. That's all.
Okay, that wraps up the meeting. I appreciate everybody coming out and expressing their feelings, and we'll do it again next month.